another SheClicks webinar, this time about creating portraits with impact. I'm Angela Nicholson and I'm the founder of SheClicks. Now, tonight's webinar is presented by Emma Finch, who is an award-winning photographer and tutor. Emma has several strings to her bow, but I think it's probably fair to say that she specialises in photographing people. And she co-runs photography session days, providing portrait training and photographic events. So Emma, it's great to see you.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Hello. You're looking very well.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm happy to tell you we've got a lot of people raring to go and to hear what you've got to say today. So I'll let you get straight on with it.
Lovely. I'm just going to share my screen. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you're all well. So tonight I'm going to be talking about portraits with impact. I'll just briefly introduce myself first of all. So this is me. I started as a professional photographer about 7 years ago with Emma Finch Photography, and I specialise in family, lifestyle, branding photography, natural light, lots of young children. I had 2 young children at the time, well, still do actually, so that was it was a great way to sort of get into photography. About 4 years ago, I wanted to learn studio lighting and studio work, which was a complete dark art to me originally. I spent about a year teaching myself how to use lights, working in studio, working with models, and I eventually set up a separate business called Belle Privé Photography, and I specialise in studio work, so portraiture. I do a lot of commercial lingerie work, boudoir, vintage fashion. Around the same time, I also started a event planning and tutoring business with my business partner, Graham Curry. So we run photography session days, specialising in training for portrait photography. So just to show you what I do and the difference between my 2 styles of work, you can see why they're kept separate businesses. So Emma Finch Photography, very cute, natural light, lots of young children, and then Belle Privé Photography, very styled, female photography, using studio lights mostly. So I'm going to break tonight down into 2 sections. The first section I'm going to talk about classic portraits, basic tips and tricks, lighting, styling, posing. And then the second half, I'm going to go on to more creative conceptual work. So if you want to just do something a little bit different rather than a sort of a head and shoulders shot. So some basic tips to start with. I know you probably all know this already, but always focus on the eyes. If the eyes aren't sharp, then you're not going to be able to use the image. So always focus on the eyes. If you're shooting someone who has dark circles under their eyes, a reflector or even some tin foil or something reflective just held underneath, it creates such a difference. It bounces light back up into the face, it fills in shadows, fills in wrinkles, fills in dark circles. So it's a really nice tip. If you're using natural light and you want a little bit extra light on the face, use a reflector or some tin foil or something below to bounce some light back into the face. If you can, always try and get catch lights in the eyes. So where you can see the light in the eyes. If you have time on your hands and you want to take a look through a magazine, you can have a look at the eyes of the models, and you can often tell how something was lit, looking at the reflections in their eyes. You can see how many lights were used. You can see whether it was a square softbox or maybe a window light. So it's quite fun to work out how pictures were taken sometimes. Try not to show too much the whites of the eyes. So if someone's turned to the side and looking towards the camera, you don't want too much the whites of the eyes. You want to see the pupil more so. If you have a blinker, and quite often if I've got a client who is a little bit nervous and not used to, especially studio lights, they'll blink all the time. One tip is to ask them to close their eyes and open their eyes slowly. Look straight into the shutter, into the lens as you press the shutter, and you won't get the blink, and you'll get a nice look from them. Most times I would recommend shooting at eye level. It's the most flattering for everyone. If you're conscious of double chin, which a lot of people are, shooting at eye level or even just slightly above eye level, it will give a better jawline. But most times I will shoot at the eye level, which means if I'm shooting children, I'm crawling around on the floor on my knees, but always try and be at eye level. And another general tip is to watch tension in the mouth. So if you're working with models, fine, they're professional. If you're working with people who aren't models and they're not used to it, they may hold tension in the mouth. They may also hold tension in the hands and shoulders. So just watch tension, and we'll go into ways to help people relax in front of the camera in a little bit. So just moving on to posing. So male and female posing can be quite different. So as I've mentioned before, watch the tension in the mouth, the shoulders and the hand. Sometimes be a beautiful picture, but their hands are really clenched because they're so nervous. So just watch that. I tend to, when I'm shooting, I look my person up and down, make sure everything's correct, make sure they look as relaxed as possible. You want to watch for the details, the details that you're going to kick yourself afterwards, things that you don't want to be editing. So creases, stray hairs, wonky ties, just watch the details. If you get it right in camera, it's way easier. With male posing, it tends to be doing something. So if you've got the full body in, classic male poses tends to be hands in pockets. You know, fashion poses tend to be, you know, looking at the watch, adjusting the tie, holding the jacket. Men like to do something in the image, give them something to do. Very much like if I'm shooting children, giving them, if you're shooting really young children who really are not going to pose, they're really not going to do what you ask them to do, give them something to hold. So a leaf, a flower, a blade of grass, some small little thing that's not going to be too noticeable in the image, but if you give them something to hold, you've got their attention for literally a second so you can get the shot. Another tip, don't crop on the joints when you're cropping an image. So I tend to crop, I mean, head and shoulders, obviously head and shoulders is fine. Cropping at the waist or cropping 3/4. So 3/4 would be cropping across the thigh. Try not to crop across the knees. Try not to crop at the elbow. So cropping on joints is a no-no. And then just watching glare from glasses. So if you've got someone with glasses, particularly if you're using artificial light, you're often going to get the glare in the glasses. So you're just going to have to position the light and position the face in the exact position where you're not going to get the glare, because once you've got the glare in the glasses, it's very difficult to edit off. So female posing, again, watching the tension. Female posing is a whole art form, basically. Most clients I have want to look slimmer, in which case don't press the arms to the side of the body. You want a little bit of space between the arms and the body. Whether your client is a size 6 or a size 26, you want curves at all times. So you want visual space around the waist. You always want that sort of that S shape. Posing hands is one of the most difficult things. So you want relaxed hands. Always watch the hands, because people hold their tension there, as I've said before. So think, particularly with women, ballet hands. So really relaxed, really graceful fingers. Like Rachel here, she's a fantastic model. And she always has beautiful hands, and it really does make a difference in your images. Again, on cropping, if you crop at the narrowest point of a woman, you're going to make them look much slimmer. So for me, I tend to crop at the waist, and I tend to crop mid-thigh or just above the knee. They're the narrowest points on a female, and it really does make a difference to how they look in the images. I'd never advise cropping across the chest or across the hips, because you're going to make your subject look bigger, and most women don't want to look bigger than they are. So if you're conscious of a double chin, and again, that's one of the things that most of my clients say, oh, you know, watch my double chin. Again, something that's you know, you can't edit it out. If clients ask you to do it, it's very difficult to edit. Shooting slightly higher, and if you're using lights, putting the lights slightly higher gives you a better jawline, gives you more shadow under the jawline, and it's just a cheats way to less of a double chin. Again, watching the details, so twisted straps, creases, necklaces, you know, and the little hook comes around the front, making sure little details like that are sorted out before you shoot. And then classic turning your body 45 degrees and then to the camera is very slimming, and it works for pretty much everyone. So just a little bit on styling. Have a think about where you're going to be shooting, you know, whether it's outside, if it's on location, if it's in the studio. Think about the colour of the background, and think about what colours will complement the background. So darker colours will recede into the image, therefore they're much more slimming, and lighter colours will come forward into the image, so they're going to be much more dominant. Anyone who shot a wedding knows that white is always tricky to shoot. You need to watch your highlights. I always try and advise clients to stay away from, well, both black and white actually. Black they can blend into the background a little bit, and white is very dominant in an image. If you have any say at all in what your subject will wear, try and sway them in the right direction. Avoiding busy patterns and very bright colours around the face can help. With it being portraiture, you want the viewer to look straight into the eyes of the person and straight into the face of the subject. You don't want them looking at the pretty blouse or the really bright bracelet or something. You don't want any distractions. It should be all about the face with portraiture. So anything that will detract from the face is really not helping the image. And then just with women, slightly more makeup than usual is helpful, particularly if you're using artificial light, studio lights. It tends to wash people out. So slightly more makeup. It may feel unusual for them to be wearing that much makeup, but actually it disappears on camera and it comes across much better. So just a little bit on lighting. I know it's something that a lot of people in the SheClicks group have asked for, and I'm going to start with natural light and progress it on to sort of more complicated lighting. I'm not the most technical person in the world. I will do it the easiest way I possibly can. I don't think you need a seven light setup. In fact, 90% of my work is done with one light. So it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be complicated. So starting with natural light, it's, if you possibly can, plan the time of day that you're going to be shooting. The best light is in golden hour, which is the hour or two before sunset. Not everyone can shoot then. So early morning's good, late afternoon's good. You basically want to be avoiding overhead sun. Overhead light's not flattering for anyone, particularly if it's bright sunshine. If you do have to shoot in bright sunshine or at midday, then you want to look for shade. Bright sunshine can be very unflattering. You're going to get harsh shadows, lots of contrast. You're going to get people squinting into the sun. It's really difficult to shoot in, as I'm sure you know. So look for shade. So this image here of Ivory Flame, that was shot last year. It was literally the hottest day of the year. It was swelteringly hot. It was at Jesus College in Oxford. It was in one of their quadrants. One side was bright sunshine. This side was shade. Obviously, I went to the shade. I think it was around lunchtime as well, so it was a bit of a nightmare. But absolutely beautiful light in the shade. Cloudy days are easier to shoot in. So I often pray for a cloudy day when I've got an outdoor shoot. And if it is a cloudy day, sometimes you can't tell which direction the sun's coming from. So I tend to use my hand, move it around. You can see how the light's going to fall on your subject's face by looking at the palm of your hand, and then you'll determine which direction the sun is coming from. So outdoor light, fantastic, one of my preferred lighting sources. So this is natural light still, but taken indoors. So this is me standing in the window with the window behind me, shooting Lydia, the model. The backdrop is a big old canvas that I painted with chalk paint, black chalk paint. The studio, or the mill where I have my my studio, it's an old cotton mill in Manchester. and it's full of creative types, so photographers and artists and videographers and painters. And somebody was getting rid of a huge canvas, asking if anyone wanted it. I'm a womble, so I said yes, I'll take it. Painted it dark colour, and it's fantastic. So my point is, you don't have to have expensive photographic backdrops to make a backdrop. You can use old duvets, old bits of material. I quite often go to the fabric shop actually and buy different offcuts of material to make backdrops with, so you don't have to spend a lot of money on your backdrops. So using natural light, which again is one of my preferred, even in the studio, natural light is so flattering. It's an even light. It's very flattering for all ages of skin, because there's no shadows, because the light's coming straight onto the face. You have to shoot a little bit wider than normal and put your ISO up a little bit to get the exposure that you need, but it's a very beautiful light. So if you have no studio but you want to do studio style work, just use your window. It's really flattering. I get so many compliments on my natural light work, even though I own a studio and God knows how many lights. So this is a one light setup. The light that I tend to use is a Pixar Pro Pica 200. For those that don't know what that is, it's like a little bit like a glorified speed light. You can do the exact same thing with a speed light, but the Pixar Pro lights that I use, the battery lasts much longer, much easier to use. And because I do half my work on location and half in the studio, they're perfect, they're very portable. So I tend to put my light on a quarter power. Also works for speed lights. If you just got a speed light, put it on a quarter power, that tends to work for 99% of shots, to be honest. I use an octabox, which is a great big octagonal shaped softbox. I put it to the side of the subject. The bottom of the octabox is usually on level with the chin, so it's a little bit higher than you think, and it's feathered. So for those that don't know what feathering a light means, instead of the light coming straight on this way, so if I put a light here, it's going to create a big shadow, a big Emma-shaped shadow behind me, which is not very professional. Putting the light at the side, so the light comes across this way, and you're just catching the edge of it, means you don't get the shadows behind, and also it's a much more natural kind of a light. Professionals do use octaboxes an awful lot. The bigger the better. I think you don't have to spend an awful lot of money on lights, but make sure you choose the right modifier for what you want. So an octabox will give a soft light, very easy to use, and it gives the octagonal shaped catch lights in the eyes. You can see here, this is G. Brody model, who was doing the Joker, and if you look in the eyes, you can see the catch lights of the octabox. So the octabox is the preferred choice of professionals because it gives more of a rounder shaped catch light in the eye, so it looks more natural. Because the light's quite high, it feels more natural, because obviously normally we're lit by the sun, which is high and it's round. So that's why octaboxes are so popular. So this image has done really well for me. I got a silver award with the Guild of Photographers, and then it was shortlisted for Contemporary Portrait of the Year last year. So I got into the final 10, and that was the first image that we took on the day. So it was, it's done very well. So camera settings, if you're using an artificial light, my standard settings don't change that much. So f8, a speed of 160 and ISO 100. The speed, you don't need to go any faster than 160. Your subject is static. F8 tends to work very well. You can tweak it a little bit if you want more light or less light. And ISO 100, that can stay the same because your studio lights are doing all the work for you. So you don't need to push your camera settings any. So fine art lighting. So this is using two lights. So again, it's got one octabox to the side as before, but this one's also got an octabox overhead on a low power. But it's a very sort of distinctive lighting style. It gives a very painterly classic style. The tones when I'm doing fine art work tend to be warmer. You've got a little bit more contrast, a little bit more drama. It's supposed to be reminiscent of the 17th century painters like Rembrandt. They used to paint by the window. So they'd have the window light, they'd have the subject facing sort of side on, and they'd get the little triangle of light on the cheek. So this lighting, we want to try and get the triangle of lighting on the cheek. So yeah, so it's lit with 2 octaboxes, one to the side as before, but this time one above as well, on a big boom arm, literally hanging above the model. Different style of lighting again, which is noir lighting, so very, very contrasty black and white. I do quite a lot of vintage work, so film noir and vintage Hollywood. So different modifiers this time, so it's a much harsher light. So I would use a beauty dish or a snoot. So a beauty dish and a snoot, they tend to have honeycomb grids on the outside of them, so the light's very directional. It's a lot harsher. It's probably more difficult to work with, and it's not as flattering on everyone as an octabox, but you get more dramatic light with it, and you can shape the light a little easier. So quite often I'll use a beauty dish at the front and a hair light at the back. You want to be able to see just the outline of where your person ends and the backdrop starts. You don't want your person to blend into the backdrop. The second image of the model with the big necklace on, which is a lot lighter, that's clamshell lighting, or paramount lighting. They used to use that in old Hollywood movies, and basically it's a light above and a light behind. They call it clamshell because they're kind of caught between the two, and it's a very old-fashioned vintage light, but also a lot of beauty photographers use that light as well. And then just briefly touching on coloured gels. So coloured gels, they are sort of bits of cellophane that go over your light if you haven't used them before, and they can change the colour of the light. So you can use it very subtly to change the background of your image. So if you put the light on the background and you've got maybe a grey is a very good colour to take colour. Put the gel on the light on the background and you can change the background colour, or you can put it on your person. So the image on the left, quite subtle. There's a very subtle blue and a very subtle red. Not that noticeable, but just adds a little bit of something different. The one in the middle, full on colours everywhere. And the one on the right is just a bit of fun. So the one on the right was taken with 3 lights, all of which were coloured lights. There's no white light there at all, but the 3 coloured lights mixed together to create a white light. So the subject is lit with what looks like a white light, but you've got all the coloured shadows behind. So that was just some fun, really. And quite often when you're using gels like this, you're better with shiny material or oil on skin, or something that's going to be a little bit reflective so you can see where the colours are. So before I move on to the next section, just shamelessly touting my wares. If you're interested in any of the lighting styles that we've been through tonight, do take a look at sessiondays.co.uk. We have a number of different workshops covering different lighting styles, where we teach the class, and then you get to shoot and practice what you've learnt. So if you're interested in learning more about lights, then take a look at Session Days. So just moving on to creative portraits. So it's just taking it one step further. If you want to do something that's just a little bit different, a bit conceptual, or just more creative than a standard portrait. So Pinterest, I'm sure most of you are on Pinterest already. Pinterest is absolutely fantastic for ideas. I use Pinterest for almost every shoot. For those that don't use Pinterest, it's sort of a online mood board creator. So you can pin the images that you like to create a mood board. And then when I'm going into my shoot, I usually print off the mood board. So when you're halfway through and you're thinking, oh crikey, what should I do now? You've got the visual reference in front of you. So I really do recommend using Pinterest. There's so many fantastic images on there. So choosing a concept So just I'm going to throw out some questions really to think about before you decide what you're going to do. So you need to know what feeling you want to convey with your image. Is it going to be happy and funny and upbeat, or melancholy? Is it about confusion? Do you want to show vulnerability or strength? You need to really think through what you want to achieve and what you want to convey before you start shooting. How can you use light and shadow to enhance your theme? And we'll move on to that a little bit later on. Do you want it to be bright and colourful or muted and monochrome? Basically, during lockdown, I helped a camera club with a project, and they were doing creative self-portraits that showed their experience during lockdown. And it was a really interesting project, and there was such a variety of ideas and feelings and moods and different ways to interpret these images. It was a really interesting project to be involved in. And maybe at a time like this, when it's very difficult to be shooting people, a self-portrait project is quite interesting, albeit scary. So conveying mood. So confusion, using blur or using smoke can convey confusion. Melancholy, obviously muted colours or a darker light. Happiness, so well lit, bright colours and an open body pose. So make sure that all the elements of the image pull together to convey the mood that you're trying to achieve. Vulnerability, if you shoot from above, you make your subject look smaller, which tends to show vulnerability. You might want them to close off their pose or have their body tight, everything tight together. It shows a vulnerability. Whereas strength, if you shoot from below, you're going to show dominance and power and strength. If you shoot from below as well, you make people look bigger, legs look longer. So knowing which angle to shoot from as well can help. Connection to the viewer. Will they look at the camera or will they be looking away? These are just things that you need to consider before you start the shoot. Props, always useful. If there's any props that can help enhance your themes, so flowers or books, mirrors. So this image here I took in the studio, and it's just a piece of perspex. Got water, sprayed the water on so it looked like it was raining, and it looks like she's in it's a rainy day and shot through the window, but it's not. It's a piece of perspex. So don't be afraid to shoot through glass. Use raindrops. Shooting through rainy windows. Prisms are very popular. Shooting reflections in the mirror. Anything that's slightly transparent that you can see through. You can create your own image with it. All sort of rules go out the window when it comes to conceptual and creative portraiture. So just touching on colour can really enhance your theme. So generally speaking, and this goes for all images, not just portraiture, landscape, anything. People are drawn to warmer images, and they're less drawn to cooler images. So you probably find that the most popular landscapes even are the slightly warmer images. People, if they're in an art gallery, people will go more towards them. Monochrome can make an image look more serious and more documentary style. Think about colours like red, which is danger, love. Think about the little girl in Schindler's List with the red coat. Everyone remembers that. So colour can be so powerful in an image. So white, the simplicity, purity. I mean, some of these are a little bit loose, but think about how the colour can really enhance your theme as well. Composition as well. So even though we're talking about portraiture, so you think head and shoulders, probably as you see me now, don't feel constrained by that. So as we said before, shooting from above shows vulnerability, shooting from below shows strength and dominance, but don't be afraid of using perspective or unusual angles. Do you need the whole face in shot? Maybe half a face, maybe half a face is more has more impact and more drama. Don't be afraid of using negative space, so maybe half a face and then some negative space. Sometimes negative space can be really really dramatic in an image. So we read an image from left to right. So we come into the image from the left and we look to the right. So bear that in mind when you're composing your image. You want the viewer to be drawn in from the left to the right hand side. Think about perspective as well in the image. So do you want the whole face? I mean, you can do a really tight crop the top of the head and have a really striking portrait, or you can have them be really small with a huge sky and landscape behind them. So think about perspective and what you want to convey and how that can help you. I'm just going to touch on editing a little bit because it's a question that I get asked quite a lot. So with me doing a lot of female portraiture and lingerie work, there's a lot of skin to deal with. Now I use software called Portraiture, which is absolutely fantastic. It may not be something you want to invest in if you're only doing a little bit of portrait work. So if you're going to do skin, I suggest cloning on a low opacity. Basically, you want your subject to look the best they can while still looking like themselves. They don't want to look like Barbie. They want to look like themselves. So cloning on a low opacity, so wrinkles across the forehead, you want to maybe minimize them, but they still need to be there. So don't change the person beyond all recognition, but just make them look the best that they can. Dodging and burning, which is making things darker and making things lighter. I use that all the time. So I use it to tell people where to look. And pretty much the lightest part of any of my images is going to be the face. The lightest part is what you'll see first. With it being portraiture, as I said before, you want them to look straight at the face and straight into the eyes. If there's something that's white and shiny in the corner, or something that's over there that's pulling your eye, then it's not working as a portrait. So you need to either darken it down or get rid of any distractions in the image. But yeah, dodging and burning is what I do all the time. So lightest part will be the face. Anything I don't particularly want to see or don't like that much, I'll darken it down. You can control how your viewer interprets the image. Never HDR or increase the structure on a female portrait. All you're going to do is pull out the wrinkles, make them look more rugged. No woman wants to look more rugged. You can get away with a little bit more in a male portrait. Men don't mind looking a bit more rugged. So you can use a little bit of structure or clarity on a male portrait, but on a female portrait, no woman wants to look more rugged. Same with saturation. I would never increase the saturation on a portrait. If you're not going to do very much at all, even just desaturating maybe 5%, 10% can often improve a portrait. It can take out, maybe the pinkness or the yellowness in the skin. It can just even out skin tones. So if you're not going to do very much at all, just desaturating just a tiny bit can make a portrait look more polished. So watch your white balance. Now you can control that in camera, but if you've stayed on auto white balance and the white balance looks a little bit off, you can tweak it in Lightroom or in Photoshop. Particularly if you're shooting indoors without studio lights. Lights indoors can look a little bit yellow, in which case you want to try and correct that when you're editing. Black and whites, I tend to use Nik software. And when you're doing a black and white, you want to make sure your blacks are black and your whites are white. You don't want everything to sort of look grey in the middle. So make sure you've got the black blacks and the white whites and everything in the middle. And just another tip with highlights. Sometimes when you've been editing for ages and you're looking at the image and you can't see the wood for the trees, and I do this as well, you can't see the errors in your image. So a couple of tips: you can either squint at the screen and you'll be able to pick out where the highlights are. And if it's not the face, and if it's something else, then you need to tone that down. Or the other way is to turn the image upside down completely. if you turn it upside down completely, your brain isn't trying to work out what it is. Your brain will just go for the light bits. So again, if the light bit, if there's something that's pulling your eye and it's not your person, you need to tone that down. And then the other thing I always advise people to do is do your edit, go and have a cup of tea, biscuit, come back a couple of hours later and take another look. Note to yourself, what's the first thing I look at in that portrait? And again, if it's not the face, there's a distraction in it, in which case you need to tone it down, darken it down, or clone it out. So they're my top tips for editing. And just a tiny bit on publication. So I've had about 40 publications. I think I've had 5 or 6 front covers. And this goes for any subject, whatever you shoot, whatever genre you shoot. Find a magazine that suits your style, that suits your genre. Check out the submissions guidelines on their website. Quite a lot of magazines will have information on how to submit images. You can apply for reader spotlights. I think a lot of magazines, especially this year, are looking for content. They need to be able to publish something. So don't be afraid to apply for reader spotlights. Don't be afraid to get in contact with them and ask them if they're interested in your work. One of the things that have been really successful for me actually is engaging with their social media. So a couple of times in the past year, actually, I have commented on a social media, on an Instagram post or a Facebook post. They've got in contact with me, or they've looked at my work, liked my work, and I've been published quite a few times. So I think with the Photo Plus, the Canon magazine, I commented on, I think they were asking for what Canon kit have you got? So I commented on their Instagram post. They liked my work. They asked me to be a sort of mentor for the day. They brought in an apprentice, and I think I got 12-page spread in the magazine. And it literally was right place, right time, just from commenting on their social media. So they're just some top tips for getting your work published, and it is always fantastic to get your work published. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much for listening. There's just a couple of discount codes there if you're interested at all, with Pixapro, Rotolight, and DS Color Labs for printing. They might be useful to you. But thank you for having me.
The first question is from Brenna. She said, can you recommend a decent stand to put a backdrop on, please? She loves the idea of using different fabrics.
Yeah. Well, do you know, my backdrop stand was, it was part of a studio kit that I got from China for about £100. And it's fantastic. It's really sturdy. I don't even know what brand. I don't even know if it has a brand, to be honest. So it's, yeah, make sure that the stands are sturdy. But yeah, mine was, as is most of my kit, pretty cheap, but it does the job. So I think if you're just hanging a piece of material enough for one person, it doesn't even have to be anything too crazy. You don't have to spend too much money on it. So probably the cheap ones on eBay are fine, to be honest. That's where I got mine from, and it's still going. And I've got a studio now, and it's still fine. So
if so obviously it's slightly different times at the moment, but you could always pop into a camera shop and just try a few and see what you think.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you're going to have a bigger group of people, then you need to think about a bigger stand, but also as you move those supports apart, obviously they need to be stronger. But you can make things stronger by weighting them down, can't you? It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know,
yeah, I mean,
legs or anything.
Yeah, I think you need, yeah, sandbags. If you've got some of my stands are really heavy, sturdy, you know, they won't move at all. Other ones are sort of like portable ones, which I use more for location work. If it's light and portable and quite flimsy, then it's safer to sandbag it, which I do. Also, if you're working in a smaller space, a smaller stand is easier to work with, because some of the big stands, that the legs just go, they're really wide, so you do need space for them. But my backdrop stand is about 10 foot wide, so I could just about, well, no, I could get a family group on there if I need, and that tends to be pretty standard. I think most of them are about the same width. So, I mean, the wider the better with a backdrop. If you go into the fabric shop, the wider the better. You know, you get some fantastic bits of material, but if they're only that big, you know, your person's going to have to be sort of standing right on it. So make sure you get as wide as possible. But yeah, use the fabric shop, you get some great backdrops from there. So
yeah, I guess also it depends on, you know, where you're shooting, because if you're, let me say, if you know, if you've got a house that's got beams, maybe you're quite happy to push a few pins into them or something like that.
Yeah, or just even if you've got, I don't know, anything. I mean, I've got in my studio, because it's an old mill, there's like water pipes that go across near the top of the ceiling, and when I took the sugar I thought, oh, they're right in the way, they're really awkward. They're not, they're the most useful things. Literally throw something over them,
Yeah,
backdrop stand. So
okay. Nothing too heavy though.
no, I don't want to pull the pipes down.
Yeah, no, that's really useful, isn't it? That's turning a sort of an obstacle into a bonus, so that's great.
It's good.
Okay. Low Red has asked about your session days. She says, are they in Manchester?
The studio talk ones are in Manchester at my studio. The other portfolio builders, which is more of an event day, it's not so much taught, we just provide you with the lighting and the models and the location. They tend to be all around the northwest, in different locations. We would like to take it further afield. We were planning to take it further afield, and then 2020 happened. So we'll see what happens next year. Also, with depending on what Boris says on the 2nd of December, we might think about taking some of the workshops virtual as well, because this year has been beyond frustrating with rescheduling and rescheduling and rescheduling. So we'll see. But yeah, they tend to be northwest based, mostly.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Kirsty has asked, when you were talking about shooting people wearing spectacles, do you ever shoot with and without and then sort of blend the eyes in or not?
I don't know. If they're a person that sometimes has them on and sometimes has them off, I would advise to take the glasses off. It's way easier to shoot without them. If they wear them all the time and that's them, then you need to get the shot with them wearing it. In which case, so if it's corporate headshots and things like that, they need to look like they look. I tend to just get them, you know, twist a bit, twist, stop, and hold it there. So just make sure the lights aren't reflecting. I'm not the greatest at composites and things like that. So if you're great at composites, then go for it. But yeah, I'm not. It would look very odd if I tried to do that, I think.
I think also, you know, if you're shooting for people as a one-off, it's kind of a high risk thing, isn't it? If you don't know if you've got it in camera. At least if you know you've got it in camera, then you're okay.
Yeah, I'm very much a get it right in camera person. So I'll make sure I'm obsessive about light, and about details, and just the quality of the image, so that when you come to edit, there's not that much really you need to do. So I would always try and get it right in camera, and then it's just way easier.
Okay. Sapphire has asked an interesting question. Could you recommend somewhere to get the interesting outfits that you mentioned, particularly for children?
Yeah, well, some of the shops on their website will have like an autumn look, and it will have all the colors that tie in together. So when I'm shooting children, I mean, I give clients a guideline. Some of them read it, some of them don't read it. I can't control, you know, some of them will come with the, you know, I don't hate actually words, logos, because if you've got words across a t-shirt, you're not looking at the face, you're trying to read what it says on the t-shirt. So I always say, stay away from, you know, slogans, you know, things with big branding, anything with words. Try and stay away from bright colors. Most clients, certainly the family clients who look at my work, there is a style, and it's quite, I'm a bit old-fashioned, to be honest. I've got 2 girls, and at the moment I can still dress them, so I'm taking full advantage of that. So it's all mini Bowden, it's all very classic. What I don't want to do is take images that are really going to date in a couple of years. So I try and if possible, to get them to wear maybe one colour, classic styling, quite little bit old-fashioned. It works well with the sort of natural settings that I use. But yeah, a lot of the shops will have this sort of lookbook, and it ties in different elements of what they're selling. Excuse me. So I think Zara do it. There's quite a few shops that do it. If you have a look on the websites, and it gives you ideas of the colours that tie in together. Try if it's a family group. I wouldn't have them all in the same colour, but you want them in colours that sort of harmonise and work together, and sort of so it looks cohesive, but it's not matchy. But yeah, as I say, there's only so much you can do with clients. You can advise, but at the end of the day, it's their shop. So if they want to wear, Power Rangers t-shirts, that's up to them. So.
What about with models that you've booked? If you want them to wear something a bit more interesting.
I tend to book. A lot of the work I do is commercial anyway, so they've got to wear what the designer gives them.
Right.
A lot of it is for lingerie brands, in which case you've got to shoot what you're given. If it's a collaborative piece of work, which I do have to do because I need to constantly be showing work, I tend to book models. I'm very particular about who I book, and they've got to have the right look. Obviously, they need to be able to do their own hair and makeup, because I don't want the extra. If it's a collaborative piece of work, I don't want the extra expense of a makeup artist, which is what I would have for clients. So yeah, they've got to have a very specific look and the clothes that will go with it. And then before the shoot, I usually get them to send me images of what they've got. We'll work out what we want to use. On the day, I always tell people to bring more than they think they're going to use, and then we'll go through it, and then we've got choice on the day. I don't want to be limited by what people bring. But yeah, I choose my models carefully to fit the look that fits my aesthetic as well.
Okay, that's really useful advice. Wendy Collins has made an observation rather than asked a question, but she says that some people see right to left, including her. So that's interesting.
Yeah. No, I've heard that we read an image left to right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't notice. I don't, go like that. You tend to look at what jumps out at you first, which tends to be the brighter thing, to be honest. But it's I think more so than thinking about left to right, think about dark and light, because definitely anything that's lighter is going to jump towards you more. So
okay. Let me see. Lo has asked if you could recap the position of the two octoboxes for fine art and Rembrandt lighting, please.
Yeah. So Rembrandt lighting you could do with one light, and it's a feathered light, which means it's, instead of it coming this way towards your person, it's coming that way. So it's actually not pointing at them, it's pointing past them. You want them just to get the side of the light. So they're being sort of brushed by the light at the side. So the light is, hang on, so you can see this, the light is there pointing that way. And if they're looking straight at you, this side's going to be lit, and this side should have a little triangle of light. If you face them to the light, then they'll be better lit. But if you want the sort of moody Rembrandt lighting, then this is lit, this is dark, but you get a little light here. So it's just one light going that way. With the fine art lighting, same thing, but I have a octobox literally above their head, and that's on a really low power, It's just to fill in some of the shadows down the body. So your key light, which is your main light, will always be this one that's going this way. So when I'm setting multiple lights, I always say to get your key light right first, that's your main light, then add in any extras that you think it needs. And then always tell your person which is the key light, so which is the main light, so they know how to pose. Because if the light's over here and they're posing like that, it's just, you're not going to get anything. So they always need to know which is the main light as well.
So what's the maximum number of lights that you routinely use?
Routinely, maximum 2. Right. I'm a straightforward girl. It doesn't need to be complicated. I've had quite a lot of success with the basic lighting setups that I use, so it really doesn't have to be multiple lights here, there and everywhere, which is what I thought when I started, which terrified me. So
you wind up with more highlights and shadows and all sorts of things.
I can't cope with it. It's too much for me.
Karen has asked, how do you deal with tension in the mouth?
Yes, I'm the number one person for tension in the mouth because I did test having my picture taken, and I tend to sort of purse my lips and look like I'm about to rip someone's head off. I think the way you really need to sort of talk to your subject. So when I've got a client in the studio who looks absolutely terrified to begin with, they've never done a photo shoot before. They really do have the deer in the headlights look, and the first couple of shots they will look terrified. There's no two ways about it. So what I'll do, they'll have their hair and makeup done. They'll come on set. I'll say, I'm just testing the lights. Well, I'm not testing the lights because the lights are already ready, but I want them to get used to how it feels to have the lights going, how it feels to have me in front of them with the camera. It's very, I mean, having a photo shoot is it's quite intimidating. It's quite intense. So I want them to get used to the situation first with the lights and whatnot. I'll talk to them. I think the fact that I'm a woman and they're a woman, you can chat, you can have girly banter. Oh, those earrings are so pretty. Or, I always, if you throw out compliments, I mean, genuine compliments, you can immediately see the spark in someone's eye. So, oh, your hair's so shiny. What shiny? If you think it a nice thought, say it. And it really does make a difference. The first couple of shots, as I say, you just delete them basically. After that, they'll really get into it. And at the end of the shoot, I don't have to give any direction at all. They're like professional models. They're absolutely fantastic. But I think telling them what you're doing, when you're looking at the back of the camera, don't grimace. Or if you grimace, say, oh, you look spectacular, but I just want to check, I'm just checking the lights, or the lights aren't quite. So talk to them about what you're doing. Tell them where you're shooting to. So if you're shooting from head to toe, they kind of know how to pose. If you're just shooting the headshot, then the toes don't need to be pointed. So just talking them through everything that you're doing. And yeah, I think the only way to get rid of specifically tension in the mouth is trying to get them to relax, or just, have the mouth open a little bit. One tip for chin, I talk a lot about double chins, but clients talk to me all the time about double chins, is to have your tongue on the roof of your mouth. So it just lifts the chin a little bit. Or another technique is just to push your chin forward a little bit, which feels really weird, but in camera it works. It gives a better chin line. But yeah, it's just putting people at ease, and they will absolutely get into it and relax through the shoot.
I recently had to shoot my own portrait for just for passport, and
Yeah.
of course there you've got to have a neutral face.
What you do, yeah.
Like you, I ended up looking like I was going to kill someone.
Yeah,
It's really hard to have a neutral face that doesn't look. It's easier to smile, I think. So maybe if you want to have some shots that are neutral, maybe work up to those after you've done the smiley ones when they're feeling a bit more relaxed.
I did my passport one. It got rejected because my hair was too messy. I was like, this is my hair. What do you want me to do with it?
Hey, you don't expect a critique, do you?
Sorry if you don't like my hairstyle, but.
Helen has asked, in the single light setup that you use, how far is the light from the subject?
It's quite close, actually. Oh God, I'm such a girl. I'm going to go. It's about that. It's about maybe 3 foot away. It's pretty close because I'm quite a dark and moody shooter. Actually, I veer towards dark and moody, so my lighting tends to be darker rather than lighter. So I have my person a little bit away from the backdrop, because you don't want the shadows. You don't want the person-shaped shadow behind. And also you want a bit of depth to the image, and the further they are away from the backdrop, the less you're going to have the shadows and the darker the backdrop's going to be. So my lights are quite close, but also because the studio is not huge as well, I can't have them way away from them. So it's about 3 foot-ish away. So they are quite close.
On a similar vein, Philippa has asked, on average, how far in front of the backdrop do you place your model? For example, the Joker she was thinking of.
Yeah, now the Joker is closer to the backdrop because that was my black backdrop that I painted, and it's got a bit of texture in it, because it already had a painting behind my painting, so you can see the brush strokes and things, and I quite like that texture. Mm-hmm. So he was maybe about 3 foot away. It was closer than I would normally have. I don't like my people right on a backdrop, because it can look a bit. it can look a bit amateur, and you can get the shadow. It's a cheat way to not get the shadows, to be honest. Yeah, so I have them quite a way away, and also because I like it dark and moody, so it makes the background darker as well if you've got them further away. But that one, sorry?
I don't think it's cheating. I think it's a way of getting no shadow on your background.
Well, yeah, I suppose. But if you are, I mean, if you do have to shoot and you are getting the shadows, then the two ways is to bring your person off the backdrop or to feather your light a bit more. So have the light less pointed to them and have it sort of pointed to the side of them to get rid of those shadows that I'm obsessive about.
Okay, good tips. Anila has said about the publications, the magazines often ask for 10 to 15 images raw so they can edit them and only feature one image. This
Really?
usually puts her off applying. What are your thoughts, please?
Oh, I've never had that. I've never had it, and I wouldn't let them. No, no, my work is my work, and I wouldn't let anyone else edit it at all. That's really strange.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's something I've heard of either, actually.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't let them do that. It's your work. It should be your edit. They shouldn't be editing at all. I've never heard of it. So it sounds a little bit dodgy to me, maybe, or a bit unusual.
Yes. Okay. Another technical question. Helena's asked, what lens do you typically use?
Yeah, I use, my workhorse is my, I shoot Canon. My workhorse is my 24-70 2.8. I absolutely love it because it works, as I say, I work sort of 50% location, 50% studio. It works in both. You've got the flexibility with it. The fact it goes to 2.8 when I'm outside. I mean, I love natural light, so I like to be able to shoot wide open. So that's my workhorse. That's on my camera all the time. If I'm outside with children, I also use my 70-200 2.8, which is absolutely fantastic, absolute beast. So I need a massage afterwards, but absolutely beautiful lens. And it means that you can be a distance from children and not have to sort of, they don't feel so intimidated because you're a bit further back, and you get beautiful bokeh with it. The beautiful the blur and the sort of definition between your subject and the background. So that is another fantastic lens. I've also got 50mm 1.4, which I tend to use more for detail work. A 50mm can distort a face a little bit, especially if you're too close. It can make your nose look bigger and your eyes look bigger, unless you're a distance from the person. So I try and use as long a lens as possible because it keeps everything in proportion a little better. But to answer the question, was a long answer. 24-7 2.8 is my go-to lens.
Okay, and do you primarily use it towards one end or the other?
I think I'm in the middle. As I say, the studio isn't huge, so I'm a bit restricted by the where I'm shooting in the studio. So the longer the better for me. But yeah, depending on where I am.
Okay. Now Sue has asked, and now you have actually done this, but I think it's perhaps a point that is worth reiterating again. If you could repeat your point about feathering the octobox. She's also said it's a great presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, feathering is my go-to lighting setup. And I think when I first started, and you think, oh, the light's got to be in front and come this way. No, put the light going that way. And it will be a more muted light. So you might find you might need to either adjust your settings or you might need to turn the light up a little bit. Though having said that, my settings are I start on a quarter power and almost always finish on a quarter power, very rarely change it. So the ways that you can make it lighter or darker, the easiest way obviously is with your aperture. So if you're on f8, if you want it lighter, go to 7.1. If you want it darker, go to f9. You can move the light further away to make it darker, move it closer to make it brighter, or you can change the power of your light. For me, just change my aperture. It's the lazy way to do it. It's the easiest way to do it. But yeah, feathering just means you're brushing your subject with the light as opposed to the full-on light in the face. And it's a beautiful light, and it's very easy to work with, and very flattering. It's a soft light and it works well.
Okay, just to make it clear to anyone, when you're talking about your lights and the power, you're using them in a manual mode. So you set the amount of light that it pushes out,
Yes.
power that it's putting out, but you're not using through the lens metering. It's not connected in that way.
No, no. So quarter power, so full power would be a full-on flash of light in your face. You would never use that for portraiture. So I'm using sort of 25% of that. So it's still, it's not a huge amount of light. You don't want too much light. I don't use a light meter. I get asked that a lot, actually. I don't use a light meter. I look on the back of the camera and I match skin with skin. So as long as the back of the camera matches the skin of the person I'm looking at, if the skin matches, I know it's exposed correctly. So I just match skin tones.
It's a real bonus of digital photography, isn't it, being able to do that?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'd been awful, I think, if it was a film camera.
Jenny has asked, again, slightly touching on a similar thing, if you have a smallish backdrop, what would your preferred lens be, the 70-200 or the 24-70?
I'd go 20.
Depends how long your room is.
I was going to say, yeah, I was also still trying to think, what would I do? It does depend how long your room is. If it's a small backdrop, you're going to need to be, you can't be, hang on, let me think about this. You might need you might need your person to be a bit closer to it. But in terms of length of lens, it shouldn't make a difference because you're just going to position yourself so that you're going to get your person within the backdrop. So as long as you have to move forward or back to sort of depends how long your room is, but position yourself to sort of make sure you've got it all in.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Do you use an MUA or let them do their own makeup?
No, I use a makeup artist for clients 100%. It's not optional. I mean, they pay for it anyway, so they may as well have it. But I find that one, it's part of the pampering experience. So they feel fantastic before they even step on set. I always book a makeup artist that is very chatty and very friendly, so that it really does relax your client to start with. So they look spectacular and they feel good when they come on set, and that's sort of half the battle. Also, if you let people do it themselves, if makeup for camera is very different to the makeup that you'd wear if you're going out, you can't have anything shimmery or shiny because they may think contouring looks great, but no, in camera it's going to look sweaty. You need more of everything. It needs to, you kind of almost need to feel overdone for it to look, it just disappears on camera. So a professional job is what I always have. If I'm booking a model who's got very good skills with hair and makeup, then obviously they can do it themselves, but they're used to doing it. But no, 100% for clients, they have to have it, otherwise you just don't get the quality of images that you would with a makeup artist.
Okay. There's a few thank yous coming in. Oh, Anila's come back saying exactly. Anila was the person who asked about the magazines, and she said she thinks it's a bit strange as well. So
yeah, I think I'd avoid that one if I were you. It does sound a bit strange. Find another one.
Wendy says thank you for your answer as well. Let me have a look. Oh, Helen's saying she's definitely going to sign up for you on one of your workshops. So that's good to know.
I have to say, for those that are worried, we are 50% female, so it's not just a group of men. We are very proud to have 50% female clients. So it's a lot of SheClickers actually as well, which is good. So yeah, it's not intimidating.
Great. That's really good to know. Fiona has asked if you could explain clamshell lighting in a bit more detail, please.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, as I say, it's a very vintage style of lighting, and a lot of beauty photographers use it. So the main light is it's all quite close to the subject. So the main light is up here above them, pointing down from the top. And you can tell you got the position right because you can usually see it. In vintage pictures you can see the shadow of the eyelashes here. So the position should be, so you get the little lash shadow there, and then the other light, I'm trying to show you on this little screen, the other light sort of goes underneath but a bit further down, and that's on a much lower power because what you don't want to do is uplight someone, because that's just going to look like Frankenstein. So you just want you want it on a low power. You don't even have to have a light down here. You can have a reflector down here. You just want some light coming up from the bottom, and what that will do is it fills in some of the shadows. So you get, it's a very vintage light, and it's good for, I mean, I don't do beauty photography, but if you're doing beauty work with, you know, with the makeup and it's all about the skin, things like that. It's popular for that. You can also do it this way as well, I think, with 2 lights going this way, but the vintage way is that way.
Okay, I'm just going to have a quick look. I think we've come to the end of the questions, and everybody is basically saying thank you very much. They've really enjoyed your presentation. Yes, that's right. And you've got a few takers for more workshops, so that's good news. So hopefully post-lockdown you're going to be very, very busy.
I think we're busy everywhere. We've got the whole of 2020 to cram into the early next year. So.
Yes, of course. And that's been really interesting. Lots of useful points, lots of great tips.
Well, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for having me. It's been an honour to be here. So
thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.